When people think about the best battle shonen, a general consensus amongst many diehard fans is Yoshihiro Togashi's Hunter x Hunter. The series is praised for its deconstruction of battle shonen tropes, as well as its character writing and its dark and mature takes on the genre as a whole. Now before we get deep into this, I just want to say, I am a huge fan of Yoshihiro Togashi. In fact, he is my favorite shonen writer. The fact that my man was able to bounce between one of the best battle shonen of the 90s in Yu Yu Hakusho and then get right back into Hunter x Hunter is just incredible. It's unheard of. He made 2 masterpieces. And you know what? I do respect a lot of its strong suits. However, I do believe the fans place it on a pedestal that is at times unwarranted. I believe that Hunter x Hunter, when compared to its contemporaries, does fall short in many significant ways. And today I'll be discussing them and why Hunter x Hunter is ultimately pretty flawed. Category 1. The world building is kinda hollow and kinda sucks. The writers behind the Song of Ice and Fire novels, D&D, once said that in order to have a good fantasy story, the world has to be believable. However, Hunter x Hunter's world is probably the most vague and least fleshed out world that I've seen in the battle shonen that I regard very highly. Every location comes essentially out of nowhere due to how isolated every arc is, or we're barely given any cohesive overarching lore or context to the world early on in the series. Hunter x Hunter goes for a more soft world building approach. However, this kind of falters whenever Togashi tries to implement something. For how imaginative Hunter x Hunter can be with its world building, I do believe it can be very forgettable sometimes. Like seriously, can you even name another city in Hunter x Hunter outside of York New City? And overall, it just kind of pales in comparison to Eiichiro Oda's world building in One Piece. Now, does it have to be on One Piece's level? No, this is One Piece's strong suit. However, I do believe that it's a bit too forgettable sometimes. And I do get the whole soft world building versus hard world building debate. And I love soft world building in the Studio Ghibli films or in series like The Midnight Gospel. However, most battle shonen inherently rely way more on hard world building, as Hunter x Hunter is no exception with its use of a deep, intricate power system and the many islands that's involved, as well as mass criminal organizations like the Phantom Troop or its form of government such as the Hunter Association. I could already see people typing their comments or making their response videos right now saying, oh well, you don't necessarily have to implement this type of thing. Look, right? You can have spontaneity in your series without having to completely keep your audience in the dark all the time. I believe that some of the best stories have a build up and payoff at the end. A lot of that payoff comes from connecting the dots from pre-established lore, and overall it helps just keeps the series more structured, which in turn helps the world feel more alive. And you know what, it's fine to have twists, but if you're just now introducing a whole new continent and basically belittling all the events that happened in prior arcs just because now you want the ants to be fodder, and Netero's also apparently a lot weaker than we thought he was, and he has an even stronger son, that's just silly writing. And we always complain about how Dragon Ball Z and Naruto have pretty out of nowhere left field power escalation. However, we never keep that same energy when it comes to Hunter x Hunter. Number 2, Nen is never used in an interesting way. Nen has to be the most overrated battle system I've ever seen. And it's sad how people give every Hunter x Hunter fight a 10 out of 10 just because of it. Yes, Nen has more detail than perhaps any battle shonen I've seen. But the execution of Nen is pretty standard, like 99% of the time. Hunter x Hunter fans aren't gonna admit this, but almost every fight plays out like every other shonen fight, with Nen only being an excuse as to why people have the power they have. For example, in Uvogin vs Kurapika, Kurapika has Chain Nen, which restrains and weakens the troop members, specifically. Okay, that's cool, but that's all it does. And then Uvogin uses melee attacks to fight back against Kurapika. There's no interesting mechanics behind the Chain Nen outside of that one basic ability to restrain its opponents, specifically the troop members. And you might say, oh man, you're doing too much, oh man, you're being unfair, whatever. Okay, let's look at another fight then. Gon versus Hisoka in Heaven's Arena. We had so much build-up and exposition about Nen and its nature and how to use it and how to be Hisoka, and at the end it's just a typical but cool looking, I'm not gonna lie, hand-to-hand combat fight, and perhaps the most acclaimed fight of them all, Meruem versus Netero. Now, people usually get things misconstrued. This fight was kind of average. Now, the clash of ideologies was amazing. And the way Yoshihiro Togashi, cultivates this huge event and demonstrates both characters' personalities and characterizes them throughout the whole fight. Now, that part of it is impressive. However, the fight in of itself is kind of average. Average in the sense that I'm not saying this fight isn't hype though. It definitely is, but most of the fight can basically be summed up as slap, limb loss, bomb, end. Now here's the thing though, fights don't actually have to be complicated. That isn't a problem. In fact, I feel like character emotion and just all around hype and choreography matter much more than having like an extremely complicated fight. But you swear to God that the fans just think that every single fight is a 5D chess match. Like, it really isn't. It's pretty simple to understand and grasp. To use another battle system as a comparison, I'll use Jitsu from Naruto. In part 1, by the way, not in part 2. No. Anyways, Jitsu is much better utilized, such as in Naruto vs Neji, and Naruto's utilization of shadow close during that fight. Or Shikamaru vs Tamari as another example of great implementation of a versus power system in fights. And this isn't to say that Hunter x Hunter never utilizes strategy in fights. The dodgeball game or Morale vs Chitu serve as obvious examples as to the contrary. However, most don't, and that's okay, that's fine. Albeit though, this is mostly a complaint of the anime since the manga is now rocking JoJo stands, I guess. Number 3, the main cast is overrated. Now when I say overrated, I mean this very lightly. These are obviously good characters, however I just don't think they reinvent the wheel the way people make them out to. Let's take Gon as an example. Gon is pretty much a by-the-book shonen protagonist when you really break it down. Like, I mean, he's stubborn, but he's also likes his friends, and that's pretty much his most redeeming character trait, that he's nice and that he's somewhat talented. I think why people praise him is because of what happens in the Chimera Ant arc, whereby what transpired there and his character regression, so to speak, was just so left field, and also because of the small little details that was built up in arcs like York New City. However, I think overall he's just not super remarkable. Like, he basically goes back to the status quo after the arc ends, and, you know, Kite never really died. By the way, as a side note, I also thought that was kind of cheap, the whole Kite dying thing, but that's just me. I don't know, I guess it was heartwarming to see the whole thing with Gon meeting Ging and getting the whole "it's about the journey, bruh" speech rhetoric. However, I just feel like the whole Aluka plot device was a bit too, well, in all honesty, Aluka just felt too contrived. I do like some of the narrative liberties they took with Gon's character, such as the parallel shift between him, Killua, and Meruem. As Killua became a better person, so did Meruem. Gon became a much worse person and ended up regressing as a character. He's still an overall cute and solid character though. Or Kurapika, a well-handled but ultimately pretty archetypical revenge character. He's cool and all, and I respect his character journey. However, I don't feel like we get the same amount of emotional resonance we do with other revenge characters. For example, we're not really given a full-on backstory, in the sense that we're not given a backstory with cutscenes I mean, or any type of emotional weight to it. And though that's not really a huge problem, I do feel like it makes me not resonate with him as much as I could have. For example, with characters like Law or Takazuki from Gintama, Law being from One Piece by the way, I just feel more of a connection to their journey. Really just feel like backstories in general, actual shown detailed backstories, just increase character ethical complexity. It just increases the amount of emotional resonance you have for the character. It also just helps us feel the weight of the character's cause. Outside of defeating the troop, Kurapika doesn't have much personality of note. He's nice to his friends, he's androgynous in the anime, and overall he's just very level-headed and determined. Now this isn't terrible to say to any extent. It does sort of make Kurapika feel a little bit dull in certain areas. Yeah, sure, you could say it's cliche, or it's manipulative, or it's not necessary. However, I do feel like an actual shown backstory could have made us more emotionally invested into Kurapika's character, and it could have shown more sides to his personality that we didn't get to see in the present story. Currently in the manga, Gon has taken a backseat and Kurapika is now the central protagonist. Now this is interesting as it marks a huge tonal shift in the series. However, Kurapika hasn't changed too much of note so far. You could say he has gone darker, and that's a fair point to make. However, the extent of that darkness is yet to be shown, and that will be very interesting to see where that goes in the future. Leorio is definitely the simplest character in the cast. He starts off as very boisterous and rambunctious, and over time we become more sympathetic towards him, and he's overall a very nice, chill character. Some people like to say that Leorio is a bit of a nuisance, and that he holds the team back and he's dead weight. However, in my opinion, that's just not true. I mean, the dude's the quintessential human character in the group. He's meant to be relatable, and he does help out the group in many substantial ways, such as being the heart of the group alongside Gon, and also his expertise on medicine, and just being the kindest guy ever. Huabara is better, but I definitely appreciate Leorio. And then there's Killua, and yeah, there's not much to say here. He's a very good character. There are some things in his character arc that I feel like are a bit too forced for my taste personally. However, he's an overall very good character. There's very little to complain about here. I think my main withdrawal from the Hunter x Hunter cast is that we don't get enough of them. They aren't in the series for too long. Well, at least half of the main characters. Kurapika and Leorio are pretty much axed for most of the series. And this is in stark contrast with something like Yu Yu Hakusho, whereby all of the main characters are in the series for most of the show. Whew, okay, so that was a lot, and a lot of that was controversial. So let's get into some other nitpicks. Bro, Corlo and the Troop are still underdeveloped, and we still need to learn more about them. And no, I don't mean all these theory videos and all these other vague suggestions. I mean actual, cold, hard characterization. Now, Hunter x Hunter has never been a stranger to noir. However, right now in the manga, it just feels like an entirely different story. Togashi should have just written a completely different series in my opinion. No Hunter x Hunter brand, just a cold, seinen revenge story. Pacing in the Chimera Ant arc, especially towards the end. May I need to say more? Dude, I already talked about Alucard, but seriously, Rubber Dan. Look, at the end of the day, I still love Hunter x Hunter. I just have to address some of the flaws of the series. It's not a tier above Fullmetal Alchemist. It's not a tier above Gintama. It's not a tier above One Piece. I'm saying this because it isn't a tier above them. They're all on the same level. They're all fantastic. However, Hunter x Hunter isn't perfect. It isn't flawless. It isn't above criticism. And I just wanted to point out some of the flaws and shortcomings that I see in the series. I'm still hyped for Togashi coming back though, and I'd love to see what he's gonna put out. Though I can't lie, G. The art in the manga and the text. Oh, the text. The text. So if you do like this video, you can subscribe, you know. I'm gonna post out more videos like this. So if you want to see me rip into another manga or anime, just comment down below. If you want to see me actually give some praise to another series or anime, manga, video games, whatever, just comment it down below. Please subscribe. I'm gonna try and upload as often as possible. They ain't go giving up. I ain't gonna quit. I'm gonna be on the grind with this one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys can comment as well what you guys liked and disliked. You know, maybe I'm wrong. You know, try to prove me wrong in the comments. Let's see how this goes. And yeah, let's have some fun, guys. Shout out to Togashi, by the way. You know, let's get this man to 5 million followers by next week. I think he's already at like 2 mil or some shit. So let's see.